Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to another my research session where today I'll be talking about a lot of frequently asked questions that people have for me in 2024. So some of the questions that people have is that, oh, how is the price of HDB as compared to resale condominium private property right now? Should I buy a BTO or should I go for a resale HDB or should I go for a resale condominium instead? Okay, and other things is like, oh, when will the HDB prices start to drop? So these are some of the questions that I have, and I will be doing all this research, some of the data that I'll be providing. So come, let's move on to it. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is that what am I comparing property prices to? So for example, CPF right now is giving you OA is giving you a 2.5% return per annum. What it means is that if the property I'm buying give you a better return of 2.5%, definitely it's better to put your money in the property rather in your CPF. Okay, of course, if you are not putting in an investment that gives you less than 2.5%, of course it's better to put inside your OA. Okay, and other things is like why people buy property mainly is to hedge against inflation. So I'm also giving you the average global inflation since the millennium year 2000 is roughly between 3 to 5%, while the average inflation for the last 20 years is actually 2.7 to 3%. So these are some of the magical numbers, So definitely if you buy a property and if you want to hedge against inflation, you must have a better return than this. So the first slide or first comparison I'll be looking at is that I will be comparing HDB versus condominium prices for the last 10 years. Why the last 10 years? Because this will give you a long enough timeline for you to gauge that this is actually the proper data or the proper comparison that we should be looking at. Okay, so let's look at the HDB price trend first. Now for the HDB price trend over the last 20 years, you will see that the growth is roughly 32%. What it means is that per annum is actually growing by 3.2%. Well, this is not bad because this is exactly what government wants, because the government, the whole idea is of putting money into property is that the government wants to hedge against inflation. So that is the whole idea of purchasing a HDB, okay, to hedge against inflation. So 3.2% is actually pretty good. But if we look at condominium for the last 10 years, okay, the growth has been 50%, all right, which means on average per year is roughly 5%. It seems to be okay on the hand because what we discover is that when private property price increase by more than 5%, okay, the government actually will come in with cooling measure. But when the property price grew by less than 3%, okay, what the government will do is that they will start to remove the cooling measure. So what it means from here is that the government actually wants private property to grow between 3 to 5%, which is quite a good growth rate to peg against inflation and not to skyrocket the property. And right now the government actually is pretty happy about this. Okay, so this is what are some of the magical numbers I'm looking at. 3% for HDB and 5% for condominium for the last 10 years, okay? But let's look at the data post-COVID, which means I'll be looking at the data for the last 4 years, okay? So if we were to look for the last 4 years as compared to the last 10 years for HDB, now the market has actually grown by 42%. Okay, which is pretty alarming because if you divide by 4 roughly, each year it actually grew by 10%. Okay, now can the government come in with cooling measure or not? Unfortunately, no, there's not much cooling measure the government can do. But there are some implications, there are some regulations that the government will come in, which I will be sharing later. Okay, mainly it's actually the MOP data. Alright, so this number seems to be pretty high. Of now, I feel that it is too high. So if we look at the HDB, you will see that if you look at the private property, you will see that for private property prices, the property price since post-COVID is grew only by 32%, okay, which is much lower than HDB, which is 42%. So in a way, you can say that, looking at the growth itself, private property seems to be at a better value buy right now because it's growing at a much slower pace as compared to HDB. Because don't forget, if I have to look at the 10 years period, alright, for private property, it should be growing by 3%, but yet this is like close to 10% mark. way above it. Okay, while if you look at this, is roughly 8% as compared to the last 10 years, it grew by only 5%. So the marginal growth or the delta for the private property is actually much lesser. Okay, so I want to address the next question will be, when will HDB price fall? Okay, when will HDB price fall was a very frequently question that a lot of people ask because they are actually waiting to buy a resale, you know, and I always been telling them that buying HDB right now is all-time high, is, you know, not very good to enter into the market. Okay, so I should be addressing this, but let's look at some data. Okay, so now let's look at in year 2022 that time. Okay, so what is the rate of application? So definitely the rate of application since post-COVID, right, has actually been very high. You can see that the median number, right, for first timer is actually over 4%. So which means for every unit is there's 4 people fighting for it. Basically is oversubscribed by like 200 over percent. Okay, second timers is much worse. A lot of second timers want to buy new BTOs. Likely the reason will be that they want to upgrade to a bigger unit. Alright, so you'll see that they will look for bigger size unit, especially for the 4 and 5 bedrooms. Okay, so these are more popular ones. Even for the, you see for Ang Mo Kio side for 5 room, you'll see that it's 200 times subscribed, which means 200 over people actually fight for this one particular unit. So right now it has super been oversubscribed. What these numbers tells me is that it just tells me about the demand for new properties, okay, new BTOs, and also the demand for bigger units. So what I'm looking at is that this number, when too many people bid for it that time and they cannot buy, you know, they cannot go for a BTO, no choice, they will have 2 options. Either they go for a private property, or they want to have no choice, they have to buy a resale HDB. Now, because of this over demand, okay, strong demand, therefore this caused the HDB price actually to go up. But let's look at more recent in 2024, okay? So right now you will see that the number actually dropped, okay? Dropped to 1.6% for first timer, okay? Which is actually very good. The demand actually has dropped, but it's still oversubscribed. And the demand for the bigger area, for bigger units or second timer also has dropped, okay? From, you know, 46 to 17, which means 17 people fight for one unit. Okay, and if we look at some of the data, you'll see that it is still the same issue, that people want the bigger rooms, okay, bigger units, okay, bigger units over here, Queenstown area, you can see at Woodleigh area. So there are 2 areas. Then you can also see that people also want more mature estate. So what we can see from the market trend is this thing for HDB. Firstly, there's more demand for BTO, especially for second timer. And this group of people actually go for either more mature estate or bigger units. So this is the Singaporean needs, okay? But let's look at the supply. So this is the main data I just want to share with you. The main issue over here is that during the pandemic in 2020 that time, okay, less than half of the HDB has been completed, okay? So now what happened is that in 2022 and 2023, right, roughly is 20,000. In fact, the latest data for 2023 is 21,000 units that was completed, okay? And in 2024, HDB actually expect to be close to 20,000 also. So what important thing is that you must understand from 2022 to 2024, the total number of units over there that will be released, that will be completed, is roughly 60,000. But what especially is that, will HDB price go down or not? No. The main reason is that this group of people will not be able to sell your HDB because of this thing called MOP period. And the MOP period is 5 years. So what I want to explain is that if we look in 2022, okay, 5 years down the road is 2027. 2027 to 2029 at time, or 2030 at time, this will be where 60,000 newly MOP units enter into the market. Okay, so 60,000 units will enter into the market in 2030. So when that may cause an oversupply. This has happened before in Singapore history before, like in 2013 before, where the HDB price actually start to drop because of this oversupply issue. Okay, so if you ask me when will HDB prices start to drop, okay, it will be roughly around 2030 area, and then it will slowly drop for the next 5 years of 2030 to 2035, and then the whole cycle repeat itself. So this MOP period actually caused this phenomenon to actually happen. Okay, so do expect it to drop for the next 5 years. So which is a bit scary, because if you were to buy a resale at right now at the all-time high price, you know, at market high, okay, I feel it's a little bit dangerous, because 5 years down the road, we will expect the price to actually start to slowly drop. Okay. So I just want to debunk some myths and some takeaways that what I look at from my data over here. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about the difference between the price premium. Okay, so a lot of people says that, oh, condominium very expensive. Okay, I do understand, private property very expensive. Okay, but again, just now if you look at my slide, okay, I do agree that overall pricing for condominium is expensive. Okay, but if you were to look at my slide previously, when I was actually sharing about the percentage change of HDB versus condominium, you will actually see that the percentage change for condominium is actually smaller. Okay, or if you look over the last 10 years data, percentage change for private property and both HDB is roughly around the same, between 3 to 5%. It's just that because right now condominium, the price quantum is much bigger, therefore the percentage change, although it's the same, the overall prices seems to be higher. Okay, so the second thing is that I also address is that HDB prices honestly is unlikely to fall anytime soon. If you talk about 5 years down the road, okay, where 8 years down the road, where more HDB units enter into market, yes, then I will agree with you that the price for HDB should start to fall. Okay, now right now what we are looking at in the market is that HDB is at an all-time price high. What it means is that when people start to sell your HDB at time, there will be more profit by the HDB sellers. And when they sell your HDB at time, since you can only own one property, one HDB, definitely when they sell with a good profit at time, they need to buy somewhere else to live in. Okay, so which means this group of sellers, they have higher spending power. Okay, which means there is more HDB upgraders in the market from now until 2027 or 2028. Okay, so there are more upgraders. And where are the upgraders buying? Number one, they will either be buying bigger size properties, regardless is it private property or is it HDB. And the second one is that they are looking at more mature estate. Alright, more mature location. Okay, lastly, I just want to debunk this myth that private property is expensive. Yes, I agree with you. Private property right now seems to be expensive. Okay, looking at the last 10 years, okay, where we are comparing the trend at time, yes, it's expensive. But then again, from my first slide where I talk about the inflation percentage growth, okay, it is still a very good tool to hedge against inflation. The growth is still 5% over the last 10 years. It is the best tool to hedge against inflation. Alright, and right now, if you ask me, I still think that it is undervalued. Why is it undervalued? For two reasons. Right now, the growth is only 3% or 3.2%, while the normal growth is actually 5%. So it's actually growing at a much slower rate than HDB, and it's also very, very close to inflation value. Okay, and also it is lesser than the 10%. The 5% rate of the last 10 years. Okay, so I feel that private property is right now honestly undervalued. So actually, that's all I have it for you for this week. If you have any interesting questions that you'd like to ask, that you would like me to do a video or research on it, yeah, feel free to WhatsApp me at my contact number below. Just contact me below. Or if you have any questions, just feel free to put in the comments. And lastly, most importantly, okay, if you like this video and you find it helpful, please give a thumbs up button. Alright, that's all I have it for you this week. Thank you so long and bye.